Hey everyone, Nick Espinoza, your Chief Security Fanatic here, and today is Sunday, so we are doing Breaches of the Week, as always, and I'd like to thank the following people that sent me messages, tagged me, posted to me, linked me, whatever it was. It always helps me out, and if you have a breach for me, please let me know in some way, shape, or form, and I'm happy to give you a shout out as well. But Jason Dance, David Walker, Chris Fellon, and Jacqueline Wolf, thank you all. It's always appreciated, and with that, let's start with VPNs because they've been on my radar the last few weeks with UFO VPN and Free VPN and some of the other VPNs out there getting hit. Now we are talking about Pulse Secure VPN. Attacker published on August 4th a list of plain text usernames and passwords along with IP addresses for more than 900 Pulse Secure VPN Enterprise servers. That's right, these are the servers you connect to that are going to route that VPN for you. And that is a huge problem for them. Now, according to a review by a researcher, the list of exposed information includes the IP addresses of these servers, the firmware version of these servers, the SSH keys for these servers, a list of local users and their passwords in hash form, admin account details, the last VPN logins, including usernames and clear text passwords, meaning you as a customer logged into Pulse Secure VPN, your username and password were plain as day and exposed, VPN session cookies, and more. Now, the security researcher that noted all of this basically said that the Pulse Secure VPN servers on this list were running a firmware version that was vulnerable to a well-known vulnerability that anybody could basically exploit, and here we are. So hopefully if you're using Pulse Secure VPN, you are safe, but I would check in with them. Moving on, let's talk about LG and Xerox. I'm going to give you an update on these guys, because they've both had breaches in the last month or two, and that is thanks to the Maze ransomware group, and here we are up to date. Now, the operators of the Maze ransomware published on August 4th tens of gigabytes of internal data from the networks of LG and Xerox. Now, the attackers leaked 50.2 gigabytes they claim to have stolen from LG's internal network and 25.8 gigabytes of Xerox data. They put it all out there now because I don't think the company's paid for this, and so neither company has made statements to reporters that I could find, but heads up if you work for or use LG and Xerox products. Moving on, let's talk about Canon. We are talking about the camera maker and the printer maker and all of that. They suffered a ransomware attack that has impacted numerous services for them, including Canon's email, Microsoft Teams, their USA website, internal applications, and more. Now, an internal alert sent to employees, Canon disclosed that the ransomware attack basically occurred, and they are working to resolve this. Now, researchers had been tracking a suspicious outage on image.canon, and this is the cloud photo video storage that basically gives you 10 gigabytes of free if you buy, I think, a Canon camera or something like that. And so they were looking into this outage and possible loss of data from the users of this. Now, the image.canon site suffered an outage on July 30th, and then over 6 days, the site would show various updates until it went back into service on August 4th, when basically they disclosed a lot of this. However, the final status update is strange because it mentions that while data was lost, it says there was no leak of image data. So they are addressing a possible breach in their methodology as they are fixing the image.canon website. Now, this led researchers to believe there was more to the story, and here we are. They suffered a cyber attack, pretty big one apparently. So if you use Canon or work for Canon, heads up to you. Moving on, I want to give you guys a quick update on Blackbaud. If you recall, a few weeks ago, Blackbaud had a massive data breach, and we have basically had over 120 disclosures in the last 2 weeks of various learning institutions, educational institutions, charities, all this kind of stuff. And so this week we're seeing even more. And I'm not going to go through the entire list because it's just insane. But some of the notable ones were Cal State Northridge, WBUR, which I believe is a radio and TV station, Boston University, which is attached to WBUR, Como Friends, which is a nonprofit that supports the Como Park Zoo and Conservatory in Minneapolis or Minnesota, and the Northern Light Health Foundation out of Maine. So this is going to keep going and going and going, but heads up, if you are in a nonprofit or a charity or a university, odds are you might be using Blackbaud because they're huge, and so you may have a data breach coming if you haven't disclosed already. Moving on, let's talk about an app called Zello. Now, this is a push-to-talk app that was famously used in the last major hurricane in Florida to basically keep people connected. It's actually a pretty cool platform. They disclosed a data breach that revealed users' email addresses and hashed passwords after discovering unauthorized activity, quote-unquote, on their systems. I don't have much more than that at the moment, but Zello is saying that basically nothing got out beyond this, and so we'll see what happens with that. But heads up if you are a Zello user. Moving on, let's talk about Kentucky's employment system once again. This is the second data breach that they've had in 4 months. Now, the reporter of the alleged breach logged onto the Office of Unemployment's online system on July 27th to work on their unemployment application, and while they were there to enter their own details, the person said that they were able to once again view information on another claimant's form, basically regarding their former employer and health and all of this. And this is the same thing that's been happening with the U.S. federal government small business administration websites that many of the states use. And so we've seen multiple states basically get breached. We've also had assurances that they are going to fix this, but here it is the second time that we have had another one of these reported in Kentucky, which means odds are there's probably a lot of people that are seeing this and just not reporting it because they don't know how, or they don't care, or they refresh and maybe it goes away. I don't know. But basically the SBA really needs to get it together because it's affecting people in the pandemic nationwide. Moving on, I'm going to give you an update on Capital One. This is obviously the massive financial institution here in the United States. The Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, which is a bureau within the Department of Treasury, has fined Capital One $80 million in connection with their 2019 breach that exposed approximately 106 million people. They announced this penalty over the bank's failure, and I quote, to establish effective risk assessment processes before moving significant information technology operations to the cloud. Now, the OCC also flagged the bank for not correcting, and I quote, deficiencies in a timely manner, meaning they basically were aware of problems and didn't move to fix them fast enough. The bank also is required to improve its data security practices, which I honestly hope they do, and update its approach to risk management as a part of the consent decree with the OCC. For the record, in 2019, Capital One reported $28.6 billion in total revenue, so $80 million is significant, but not really a dent. Moving on, let's talk about Intel. This is the massive processor and chip maker. Part of the Cotman breach, which I mentioned last week and the week before, I believe, where Nintendo and Disney and others got hit and their intellectual property dumped. We're sifting through this stuff, and now Intel is on the chopping block because a 20 gigabyte folder of Intel's intellectual property was dumped online. This includes things like coding and design references to Intel's various processors and projects like Kaby Lake, Elkhart Lake, the consumer electronics firmware development kit coding, bioschematics, and more. So this is a massive disaster, and if any of their competitors were able to get a hold of this, they'd get a real good look into how Intel is developing their hardware and software. So hopefully Intel will get that under control, but once the data's out there, it's out there. Next up, I want to give you an update on the Shiny Hunters. If you recall, these are the guys that basically dumped 386 million records in late July, and everybody has been sifting through these so far, and we are now seeing more and more breaches by virtue of this. And I've talked about others like Home Chef and some others, but this week we had two that came out as a result of the Shiny Hunters data dump, as we again are just sifting through it in the dark web. So the first one is Proctoru. This is an online exam tool. This got leaked by Shiny Hunters on July 27th, just as the next one I'm going to talk about has as well. And basically 444,267 accounts were hit. This includes usernames, full names, phone numbers, complete residential addresses, and password hashes. Now, the next company that got hit by Shiny Hunters was one called Havenly. They do interior design, home decor, that kind of stuff. Now, according to the breach notification site, Have I Been Pwned, the data from Havenly includes email addresses, names, phone numbers, geographic locations, and passwords stored in SHA-1 hashes, which are fairly easy to break. But that is for Havenly. So if you have anything to do with Proctoru or Havenly, heads up to you, your information is most likely out there. Moving on, we're going to be talking about a company called MedEvolve, and this one is way overdue and kind of interesting. Now, here's what's going on. The HHS, the Health and Human Services Department of the United States government, followed up on a leak first reported in May of 2018, over 2 years ago. Now, at this time, the site noted that 2 MedEvolve clients were exposed in the data. One of them was Beverly Held MD, and I don't know what the other one was. I have very little information on this, but it's very interesting what they found so far. Now, at the time, a researcher found DAT files. It basically exposed without any kind of login requirement, and they estimated that there were approximately 12,000 social security numbers in the exposed data. This was apparently an insecure FTP system, FTP server that was leaking, again, as of May of 2018, and just this week, patients were notified of this HIPAA breach. So this is obviously a huge issue. That's government work at, government efficiency at work for you there. But over 2 years to declare a HIPAA breach when basically the rules state you've got to crank it out way faster than that. So here we are. And hopefully if you use MedEvolve, you're okay. Moving on. Let's talk about the American Seating Company. I'm assuming they are in America and make seating. They just had an email account takeover in late January and named social security numbers, driver's license numbers, financial account information, payment card information, medical information, email addresses, and password/answer to security questions, usernames and passwords, as well as those answers to security questions, health information, employee identification numbers, and or tax identification numbers were hit. I'm assuming a lot of those apply to either users of their website or employees, because they wouldn't be collecting health information if you're buying seats from American Seating, but their employees would have that HR data there. So that is obviously a major, major problem. And if you have anything to do with American Seating in any way, shape, or form, heads up to you. Moving on, I want to talk about Reddit real quick, and this is one of the last 2 things I'm going to be talking about on this week's breaches, because Reddit suffered a massive hack. Multiple subreddits were defaced during the last 24 hours as I'm sitting here talking to you, and the attackers posted messages, interestingly enough, supporting President Donald Trump's re-election campaign. Now, Reddit administrators urged users to enable 2-factor authentication, which I talk about continuously and everybody should. So basically enable 2-factor authentication on your accounts, and they also recommend changing your passwords. Now, according to the reports, basically a number of subreddit accounts were compromised by the attackers, and they also tweeted out that the moderator for Reddit was very easy to take over, which allowed them to basically get into the back end of a laundry list of very popular subreddits. And I'm not going to go through that entire list, but some of these that were the most popular and most visible are things like the NFL, National Football League here in the United States, as well as NFL teams, Black Mirror, the popular TV show on Netflix, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and various other TV shows like Supernatural and stuff like that. The Avengers, the movie series, / podcasts was also hit. / Disneyland was also hit, and just an absolute ton more. And so now the speculation begins. Was this actually a pro-Trump supporter, or was it somebody who just wanted to annoy people and force them to vote against the president in the upcoming election? Because obviously, if you're sitting there talking to your favorite subreddit or with your favorite subreddit, I don't know, Black Mirror or whatever, and now the next thing you're seeing is just re-elect Donald Trump, that's going to annoy you and be like, screw that guy, I'm not going to vote for him. Or is this actually something that basically would say, hey, Donald Trump loves Black Mirror or Buffy the Vampire Slayer or whatever? So the speculation will run rampant, but I think this really underscores a problem that we have in the next 90-ish days before the election, is that we're going to continue to see information warfare campaigns ramp up. And I have done videos and podcasts and talked about it on my radio show as well, not to mention publishing. So this is obviously a huge issue that we're going to be talking about, but that's not the last thing we're going to be talking about, because the last thing we're going to be talking about is the looting and rioting as a result of the civil unrest here in the United States. Now, I'm sure everybody is familiar now with the entire just horrible George Floyd incident. There were obviously peaceful protesters. There was a subsection that was rioting and looting. I am not comparing the two, but as a result of the looting and rioting, we now have to declare data breaches. That's right, both CVS and Walgreens, two of the massive pharmacies in the United States, have had to declare HIPAA compliance breaches as a result. And here's what's going on. And let's start with Walgreens. A Walgreens spokesperson basically said that the breach report recently filed with the Department of Health and Human Services reflects break-in incidents that occurred in late May to early June as a result of the civil unrest at approximately 180 Walgreens locations. Now, the HHS Office for Civil Rights HIPAA breach reporting website shows that Walgreens on July 24th reported thefts involving paper documents and portable electronic devices affecting potentially more than 72,000 of their customers, obviously many of which who are going to be using their pharmacy. The devices were computer hard drives, so basically the looters were stealing hard drives or computers from Walgreens. And to quote their spokesperson, like many retailers, pharmacies and local businesses across the country, we recently had a number of its stores sustain varying degrees of damage as a result of vandalism and theft. So obviously that's a huge problem for Walgreens, but they are not alone being a massive pharmacy in the United States, because we have to talk about their slightly larger competitor, from what I understand, CVS, because in a July 28th statement, CVS Pharmacies said that between May 27th and June 8th, stores in several of their key markets were vandalized. As a result, on July 24th, CVS reported to HHS a breach impacting nearly 21,300 individuals involving the loss of their physical documents, etc. And to quote CVS, after conducting a thorough review of impacted stores, we discovered on July 8 that as a result of vandalism, certain patient information was missing or destroyed. The missing or destroyed patient information included on hard copy paper prescriptions, filled prescriptions held in pharmacy waiting bins, or vaccine consent forms, depending on the store location. Now, information that may have been disclosed by virtue of this vandalism, and this goes for both CVS and Walgreens, includes things like names, dates of birth, address, medication name, prescriber information, primary care provider information, phone number, and medical information, and on and on. So, by virtue of that, the looting and the rioting that we have seen by virtue of civil unrest is causing data breaches, because we don't just have to hit a computer and steal data that way. You can steal the medication tablets or the labels or all of this kind of stuff, not to mention the computers that the pharmacists are using that would have access to databases. So this is obviously a very huge problem, and I wanted to end with that because obviously I think, like everybody in the United States here and hopefully the planet, we want to see the civil unrest go away and die down and actually have open dialogue about making real positive changes on these kinds of things. And hopefully no more data breaches will happen, as a result of this. And it's just been, it's been crazy. So hopefully it's going to go away or die down, I should say, in that sense. So those are your breaches of the week. Were you affected? Let me know. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, guys.